Hello sculptors, this is an LA sculpture class. This is the first in a series for the students working on cardboard furniture. And in this video I'll be trying to take you through the process of initial sketches of ideas all the way through creating a scale drawing that you can create a model from. So first, I want to talk to you just about the tools that you're going to need and the tools that might be helpful. You're going to need a pencil, and it is very helpful if you keep it sharp for clean lines and accurate drawings, especially when you get to the scale drawing. And you need a decent ruler. I have a English Standard ruler with inches. A centimeter ruler is fine if you're more comfortable with a metric system. And another thing I've done that I'll talk more about later is I've marked it by 1/4 inches with a highlighter to help with the scale drawing. So those are the tools you need, along with a sketchbook or some paper to draw on. Tools that might be helpful if you have any of these drafting triangles. Those can be very helpful. They can give you 90-degree angles very easily, and this one has a 60-degree angle and a 30-degree angle. They also make them with another 90-degree angle and then 245s. Those can be helpful for common angles. For drawing curves, having one of these French curves can be helpful, but those curves can also be drawn freehand, or if you need to draw circles, you can use a compass. Here's a very simple one, slightly more involved, but you can also draw perfect circles using the lid off of any container, or you can just freehand. And then when you get to making the model or cutting out the real thing, you can get a little more careful about drawing the circles. So what I'd like to do is just take you through a few pages of my sketchbook, where I took an idea all the way from the initial sketches through a scale drawing, and what I hope this will help you follow the same process even though you're creating your own design. And again, this is sort of my process. You don't have to follow it exactly. I encourage you to sort of follow your own nose and figure out your own way of doing things. But this is how I often do it, and I've tried to make it as clear as possible in the sketchbook. So if you know what you're designing, and most of you do in terms of the type of furniture, there are a couple things that can help you get started. One is to start simple. What is essential? If you need shelves, then you have to make sure every sketch you make has the shelves you need. If you need 2 shelves, make sure every design has 2 shelves. Start with that. What is essential? So I've decided to design a stool that would be so you could sit on it and pull up to just a normal dining room table height. So that gives me the general parameters of what I need. I need something to sit on, and the general idea of how tall it needs to be and how big overall. Another way to think about this is to start functional. What is it for? You can also think about where is it going. If you have a specific site, if you have a specific function, those can help get you started. So if I'm starting with a stool, I can start with a very basic drawing. What do I need for a stool? I need a place to sit, and I need legs for it to stand on. Another very simple design is here, sort of more of a circular pedestal, a place to sit, and then a pedestal that holds it up. So I start there. Now those are perfectly serviceable stools if I were to build those. I even know that the way I've been creating circular legs by rolling up Trader Joe's shopping bags very tightly. And I'll do a future video where I show how to do that if that's something that will be helpful to you. Otherwise, I'm going to be using sheets of cardboard. So I start with those 2 sort of very simple stool designs. I'm not really thinking necessarily about a finished design yet. I want to work towards that. So it's not about drawing the perfect design right off the bat. It's about moving towards that design. So from those 2 initial drawings, which I know are not my finished design, but they're sort of getting basic ideas onto paper. From the pedestal, the first thing I drew is this drawing here. I'm going to pull this up just so you can see it, see more of that. There. This drawing here, and already I'm trying to convert this into the planes that's going to be created by cardboard sheets, and I'm thinking about little shelves. Like, I'm just trying a couple things. What can this pedestal stool look like if it starts to get built out of cardboard, and also if I start to design it as opposed to just having the most essential functional elements. And, this felt like a dead end right off the bat. I didn't like the drawing. I didn't like the ideas. So I sort of stopped in that vein. And I went back to this square idea. But I also incorporated this idea of sort of a more pedestal style stool. And I drew this sort of symmetrical kind of eye form where I'd have triangles of cardboard in the top and the bottom. And it could even be a stool that was reversible. You could sit on either end, or you could turn it on its side and sit in the lower part. So that I sort of combined the two simple things and came up with sort of preliminary idea. I like some of the possibilities of this, but the overall symmetry of it wasn't super interesting to me. So you just keep going. Maybe I'll come back to it, maybe I won't, but I keep coming back. So here on this page, what you'll see is me sort of moving the design forward. I'm trying to work towards original design through iteration. By iteration, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on next page is 6. Like, every drawing, I'm trying something out. I'm trying something new. I'm not drawing the same thing, but I'm taking what I like from a previous design. This sort of triangular kind of base and top, and trying to get rid of what I don't like in improvement. I don't like the perfect symmetry, and also I'm still interested in this idea of having a place to rest feet or some kind of storage chamber. So this is the next one I draw, and I start to get a little more detailed. I know I'm going to do sort of a slot and groove construction method, the same as the coffee table you've seen a picture of. So I start to draw that stuff in. You don't need to do that until you sort of get to more polished drawings, or really until you get to the model building. But it helps me to start to draw it how it might actually look, just to give me some idea of what the design's going to be. Looking at this would be designed to be open in the front and the back. These would just be sheets of cardboard with sort of wrapped base and top. I felt like these two sheets of cardboard would be far too weak. There'd need to be some sort of internal lattice. And it felt too kind of open and a little bit clunky. But there was something about the asymmetry that I introduced that was appealing to me. And that sort of drew me to this sort of shape, this profile, which would be the equivalent of the sides of the stool. This idea of just a rectangle kind of chopped up into 3 parallelograms and drifting back and forth. So there's still some of this nice symmetry in sort of these 2 parallelograms, even though they go in opposite directions, are the same size and shape. It's sort of twisted into something a little more sort of dynamic and asymmetric, and I feel like this is like an essential shape that I can work with. So I feel like this is the first good idea. And you don't necessarily need like some big idea in the design process to end up somewhere good, but often you'll start to draw and you'll start to design and you'll end up with something that you feel like, okay, this is going to be part of it. This is going to be part of my design. It could have been like functional, like I definitely want some place to rest my foot and I definitely want storage, but I've decided that's not what I'm going to base my idea on or my design on. I'm going to base it on this shape. So I do a first drawing involving that shape, stripping away some of the details. I'm almost sort of backing up a little bit, and this is basically the 4th iteration, or really 5th if you consider this to be an iteration. So I'm basically taking this shape and making it 3-dimensional. You can see this shape on the side here. And I've started to draw a little bit of what the construction would be like. There'd be grooves there. And then by looking at this, there's this interesting possibility that the bottom corners could match up with the top corners here and here and there and on the other side. And then this idea that this angle right here could line up as well, making sort of just a pleasing sort of things lining up, things being sort of symmetrical in that way. My initial idea drawing doesn't quite have that. These angles don't line up. This corner doesn't match up with the top, or this matching up with the top there. So I'm taking this idea and I'm adapting it to the design I want. So I really like this. And I feel like I'm close to what I want. You might not get there in 4, you might get there in 2, it might take you 6, but just be patient and keep adjusting. Keep trying to improve what you like and get rid of what's not working. But as long as you're drawing, it's all there. So we move on to the next page. And here's a slightly more detailed drawing that I've marked up pretty heavily. I've drawn it with some of I can see the tongue and groove stuff on the outside. A little bit of shading, that just helps me understand sort of the three-dimensional quality of it. And also I've tried to line up my angle where the sort of these two trapezoids are going to come together. And that's sort of interesting to me, that I've taken this like 3 parallelogram, and it still is 3 parallelograms, 1, 2, 3, but it's also 2 trapezoids coming together. And I like the geometry of it. And lining up this angle right here emphasizes sort of the trapezoidal quality of that. And I've made sure that my top and bottom corners are lining up. So I feel like with this right here, and one thing I experimented with and abandoned is having an open storage slot. But I felt like it would weaken the overall structure and break up some of the clean symmetry of it. So with this design at least, I've decided to move away from footrests, storage, any of that stuff. I'm going for something clean and simple. I feel like this is my design. This is very close to what I want. This is sort of iteration number 5. Now I'm sort of getting ready to move towards a scale drawing. And a scale drawing is what gives me the exact proportions, but also gives me the dimensions I need to cut out of my thinner cardboard and make a model and see what this actually looks like. So down here is just the shape, and not done to scale, but also I've got to figure out how big of a stool do I want. Generally, if you measure like the seat of a chair or a low stool, it's about 18 inches, so I'm going to stick to that so I can pull this under a regular table. And then if you measure the top seat of a chair, 12 inches is perfectly sufficient. So 12 by 18, meaning it'll be 12 inches wide here and here, and it'll be 18 inches tall there, and there's the height right there. So those are my general dimensions. And this isn't to this scale drawing, but this is when I figured it out. And so this is my sort of idea based on a couple of measurements. And the couple of measurements that are important, 12 by 18, I've decided it's going to be that. So it's sort of a 2 by 3 ratio. I'm going to match this diagonal up, and I'm going to make sure the top and bottom corners match up as well. So what that allows me to work with, and I'll draw this nice and dark so you can see it, even though this isn't to scale, is this rectangle, this 12 by 18 rectangle. It's really, my stool is that shape with just a push in here where it bumps out and a push in here where it bumps out. And then my diagonal runs there. So it's basically this 12 by 18 rectangle cut into 2 right angle triangles. So from here I feel ready to move on to a scale drawing. And here, now there's a lot of lines and numbers going on here, and I'm going to show you sort of where my rectangle is if you can't see it. And then here's where I can also talk about the actual scale I'm going to be drawing in. So my rectangle is, here are the sides right here, top and bottom corners. So there's one side, there's another, and then my top is right here, and my bottom is right here. And then I have given some thickness to the cardboard that's going to wrap around this, the sort of the cardboard wrap over here. I've given some thickness to it, and that isn't completely necessary, but often adding these details just helps me understand what I'm doing. Now, this is a 2-scale drawing, and what I've done, the scale on this drawing is 1/4 inch is going to equal 1 inch on the full-size piece. So that means, and this is where my marked ruler can be helpful, 1/4 inch, which is here to here, and there are 4 of them in an inch, 1/4 inch equals a full inch. So for every inch on my drawing, that's 4 inches in the full-size model. And I find with furniture, 1/4 inch equals 1 inch is a convenient size to draw unless you're designing something really big, and it's also a convenient size to build models from. And I'll show you some examples of those once I get through the scale model process. So now what I can do is I know the top of my and here actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to a blank sheet of paper and take you through sort of the scale drawing process. One, I need my 12 by 18 rectangle. And when you want to measure nice straight lines, you've got to make sure you're measuring off of the edge of the paper, the binding of the book, something like that. So I know 12 inches is going to, with a 1/4 scale, is going to equal 3 inches on my drawing. So 1/4 equals 1, so 3 equals 12. And I can show you right here. Let's say if I want my rectangle to start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 3 inches. 1, 2, 3. But 12 inches in real life. I do the same thing up here. And in order to draw a nice straight line that's parallel to the edge of the paper and allows you to create right angles and accurate measurements, you need 2 points. You can't just measure once and then draw not a random line, but your best guess at a parallel line. So this is 18 inches tall. So let's say I'll start at 3 here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 4.5 inches is 1/4 of 18. Same over here. 3 to 7.5, 4.5 inches, which equals 18 inches in real life. And then what I can do is I can draw my 12 by 18 rectangle. It's 3 inches by 4.5, but a 1/4 inch scale means it's going to be 12 inches by 18 inches. Now I know I have my important diagonal here. And now what I need to do, this angle, if you go back to, I'll use this drawing, this angle equals this angle equals this angle. And it also, on the other side, this equals this. All these angles are the same. I actually don't need to know what that angle is. One thing I've decided is that this is 4 inches down, this is 4 inches up, so that leaves 10 inches in between. 4 plus 10 plus 4 equals 18. And I realize this is very specific to my design, the measurements, and even how I'm drawing it out. But this is the same process you're going to have to go through in order to create your design. So I'm marking three things. I'm marking the midway point, so it's 9 inches on both sides, and I'm marking it at 4 inches from the top and 4 inches from the bottom, just so I can figure out all of my measurements. I'm going to draw those lines lightly. And now in order to match those angles, I can draw from this point where I want the shape of the stool to change direction through the midway point down to my 4-inch line down there. And then I can do the same thing on this side. From here, from where my angle intersects the 4-inch line, I know that's where I want it to change direction, and I want it to then go all the way up there. So there's my shape right here, drawn to scale. And that's the same exact process I used here. I've added a bunch of numbers here, and I'll explain what some of them are. And then I'll explain how I use them to find the overall dimensions of the pieces I need to cut out. But that's the process I used to get this. That's very specific to my design. Yours might be simpler. It might be a little more complicated. And if you get stuck, we'll figure it out. But that's the process I'm using to get this to scale drawing. So now, because I have this shape drawn, I can put my ruler up to any edge and know how big it's going to be. So that's going to be 12 inches, because 3 times 4 is 12. I can go here, and that is let's go, I'll use this part of my ruler because it has the highlighter on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inch and a quarter times 4 is 5 inches. I can go here, and that is 2 3/4, which times 4 equals 11 inches. I can find any dimension of this from the bottom corner all the way to where the slot and groove ends, and I'll talk more about that when we get to model making, is 8 inches. Any dimension on here I can measure. And it also lets me know how big of a total piece of cardboard I need in order to cut these out. And I'm going to need 2 of them, one for one side and one for the other, and then 2 long pieces of cardboard to wrap around it. We'll get into more of that when we do model making. But now I can measure all the way from, I'm going to need a rectangle of cardboard that's this big, not just 12 by 18. So it needs to be at least 18 inches in one direction, and then I need to measure from here all the way over to here, and that's also roughly 18 inches. It's actually a little bit less, but to play it safe, I'm going to need 2 sheets of cardboard, 18 by 18, in order to cut out these 2 sheets. And then another thing I can do to figure out the length of the cardboard to wrap all the way around the top and the bottom, which is the similar construction to the Cherigami guy from Yale, which you've seen the video of. I can measure all of these, 4 plus 11 plus 5 plus 12 plus 8, all down here. That equals 40 inches. And I'm going to need 2 of those. So I'm going to need 2 pieces that are 12 inches by 40 inches. So 2 18 by 18 sheets, 2 12 by 40 inch sheets. For the scale model, I'll actually be using the actual inches. So then it would be 3 inches plus 1 1/4 plus 2 3/4 plus 1. So it would be much shorter. But that's in another video. And now I do one more drawing just because that got really messy with all my measurements. I do one more drawing where it's just the piece of cardboard. I draw as clean as possible. I know all the dimensions, and I can use this as a template to cut it out of thin cardboard to create a model first. The only thing I don't know and isn't to scale is the thickness of my grooves, so don't cut those yet if you start making models, because that's based on the thickness of the material you're making the model with, and that could change based on the thickness of your cardboard, the shoebox material, whatever you're using. And then it'll change again when you get to your actual furniture cardboard. So I know I need 2 of these pieces, and I'm going to need 2 of these pieces, which are going to be 12 inches by 40, but for my scale model, it's going to be 3 by 10. So that is, just to recap, from initial ideas through 5 or 6 iterations to get to a final design and then a scale model. The next video that will help you move your project forward will be how to move from a scale drawing to create a model. And I'll show you some of the models that I've built. Before you jump to that video, I'm going to make videos about cutting and gluing cardboard for you that you're going to want to watch first to make sure you're doing it safely and efficiently and well. I hope this is helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.